Hey, welcome to the sew along for Lottie. So she's a handbag with so many pockets. So we've got this pleated pocket on the outer front, a slip pocket in the back, and then do you know what? I thought let's do the same again for the lining. Zipper, slip, and surprisingly, because of the shape, there is so much room. Areas of concern to watch out for, especially if you have a domestic, this bit up here can get a little thick. I've tried the best I can to make sure that the pieces are near each other, the seams, but there are bits of thickness, so if you have a domestic, make sure that you're picking the right fabrics for you. D-rings, not D-rings, rectangle rings or O-rings. If you don't intend to wear this bag as a crossbody with a removable strap, go for any kind of rectangular style ring for your fancy strap. If you want to add a strap, which isn't in the pattern, but I will do a quick run through at the end, I recommend an O-ring, because obviously this doesn't come off, so you want it to sit out of the way when you clip on your strap. Options, we love options. Let's get to it. So we're going to go straight into it with the outer back. If you've already cut out your pieces, you will see that there are a lot. I'm not even sorry, because it comes together so amazing and it's just straight lines. I highly recommend using this tick sheet with your cutting labels. Use them together and it'll make life so much easier. So that's what I've done. First things first, take your lower back piece and one of your pocket strips. Make sure this is directly the right way up. And we're going to place them right side together, like that, and sew across the top using seam allowance. I am going to sew off camera because I've got like a flickering in the light bulb, which we don't want. So sew together using seam allowance. And once you've done that, if you've used a fabric that isn't like a vinyl or a cork, you can push this up and press it. If you can't, you're just going to have to smush it with your fingers and hope for the best. But what we need to do is top stitch just to hold all this in place. Like that, and it sit nice and flat now. Then take your lower back lining piece and right sides together to the top edge, and then we're going to sew them together using seam allowance. So once you've sewn them together, we're going to open them up and then flip the pieces like that, so that the whole of the pocket strip is showing on this side and only the lining is on this side. Don't try and make it half and half or anything other than that. It's obviously going to be a bit fiddly if you used a faux leather or cork, otherwise you can give that a press. I would recommend pressing like that first, which gives a nice flat edge, before folding and pressing again. And once you've done that, we're going to top stitch all the way across to hold that and make it look nice. There, just like that. So I've got all of the pocket strip on the front and none on the lining side. So grab your upper back. And what we're doing is, we'll fold that in half. We're matching the bottom edge of the lining piece with the bottom edge of the upper back. Now, if you want to, you can just check that this is all nicely level. And the thing about using stripes is you can tell when something is wonky. It might not even be the pattern, it might be the pocket, it might be anything. That looks a bit better. I think it's the fabric's a little bit off. And I'm going to clip that there because I'm happy with how that looks. And then bring this piece up. And then sew the bottom of this slip pocket together using seam allowance. Like that. So I've sewn them together. Oh, I don't want to take those out yet. Now, we just need to make sure that this is the right height. You can go ahead and get your quilting ruler out, or you can just sneak that up against there. And somehow, I'm not sure how, but they're perfecto. Of course I know how, I mean, it's totally intentional. Feel free to base stitch down the sides and that'll hold everything together when you sew this next part. If you don't want to, skip it. It's optional. But we're going to add our sides. So I've got a right one here and a left one. I'm going to start with the right. This Mora faux leather is from Country Cow Designs. She's got some new colours. Joe, or should I say Joe and Adam, because they're a team. New colours, and they're amazing. Anyway, right side to the fabric, I'm going to sew it together using seam allowance. Like that. And then we're going to open up the side piece, and with all seams facing towards the side, we're just going to top stitch. The top stitch to hold all this in place. Like that. I'm going to do exactly the same with this left side piece. So match it up. I'm going to sew using seam allowance. Then I'm going to open it up, and with all the seams facing the left side, I'm going to top stitch. There we go, and that is the outer back done and looking scrumptious. So I'm going to say it. This was the nice easy one. The outer front has got a little bit more to it, but still straight lines, straight lines. I've got a lower front, which is going to be the pleated pocket that you'll see on the outside. And then we've also got a pleated lining piece. Now in the pattern you do one and then it says go back and repeat. So we do them both at the same time. I'm going to mark on the wrong side so that they're visible. and that is purely because I've got really dark fabric. If your fabric was lighter, you could mark either side. Pattern says to do on the right side, but it actually doesn't matter. Oh, crikey. So from one of your side edges, you're going to measure in 5 inches, and on the top and bottom. I'm going to do this on this piece too. You can leave it like that with just the fabric marker, or you can make tiny little snips, and I mean they're less than a 4 inch. And what I find is that when you're pressing, you can use the snip to see where the mark is, because obviously I can't now see where the mark is. If you've drawn it on the right side, you'd be able to see it. Just a tiny snip. And obviously I just realised I am working the opposite way to the pattern, because on the pattern it's right side up, so you're marking this way first, because I've got it this way first. But again, it doesn't matter because both sides are done exactly the same. What we're going to do is at the markers, fold them right sides together and press. Give them a really good press on both pieces. Give them a good steamy press, and then we top stitch. Use a regular stitch length or just a top stitch length so it matches. We're going to top stitch down those folds. So we've top stitched. You can see it better on the lining piece. We're going to open them up so that they're flat, or as flat as can be, and grab your quilting ruler, or just measure and mark, and we're going 2 inches in from the same side that you've just done your fold. So whether you're working from the pattern or following me, it doesn't matter, we're just going from the same side. Now again, I can't see what I'm doing, because if I mark on this fabric, it's just going to be a nightmare. But this 2 inch marker is where we're bringing our fold to, like that. So you can mark it first, or just hold and hope for the best like I'm doing. We're going to give that a press, a nice press. So again, 2 inches in from the same side. And then give it a nice steamy press. Like that. Lovely and pressed. If your fabric is not conforming, it's doing what it wants, it doesn't want to stay pressed, feel free to add a few stitches across here and across the bottom, just to hold everything in place. Also, if you're using a thicker fabric, you're braver than me, but you could also sew this fold to hold it in place. Don't need to do it on cotton, it's not necessary, but if your fabric is having a funny five, there are options. And you know what I'm going to say now? I'm going to do exactly the same, but for the opposite side. So no matter which way you've done it, and it actually doesn't matter if you've got your fabric upside down, wrong way, one way around, it doesn't matter, because we can just orient it in a minute. So 5 inches, just like we did before. I'm not going to place the other markers because obviously when I steamy press, it'll get rid of them. So a little snips. Just little, no crazy. And then fold over. Watch out for your clips or pins that you might have. And give it a press. Do the same with this one. And once you've pressed the fold, you can top stitch both of them. Then take the side you've just sewn and open it up. I'm going to flip mine this way just because it's easier for me to mark it with a ruler. So again, 2 inches, bring your fold to the 2 inches. Like that. And then we give them another good press. There you go, good press. Now in theory this should be the same width. And moment of truth. Yes, they're the same as your pocket strip. Now if it's not by a big amount, feel free to jiggle these around and just re-press them, okay? But if all gone well and you followed, they should be just right. So, pocket strip. Decide which way around you want the top to be. Might go that way. Oh, I'm just thinking if I do it that way, then that kind of continues. Yeah, I'll go that way. Right. Pocket strip on top, right sides together. Sew across the top using seam allowance. Feel free to baste these in place first, just to hold everything together. You know me, just like to just go for it. There we go. And we're going to push this upwards, press if you can, and top stitch. There we go. So we're going to grab our zipper now. It is wider, longer than the pocket, because I always find, especially when you've got like a thick chunky zipper pull, it's a right pain to have to keep moving it out of the way, especially like mine, if you don't have a high foot rising, you know what I mean. So the extra is just where we position the zip while we sew it all together, and we trim that little bit off at the end. All I've done is I've actually just measured the width of the pocket. I marked it just to help me lining things up. It might not help, but you never know. Right side together. If you want to switch to your zipper foot, feel free. We're going to baste them along the edge. There we go. So once you've basted, we're going to sew in the pleated, the lining piece. So right side together again. If you want to base stitch the folds just to keep them from shimming about, you are more than welcome to. Like that. And we're going to sew them to the zip using a 3/8, so a regular seam allowance. Because it's a number 5 zipper, you've got that good space on the tape. If you're not sure about your zipper tape, you're more than welcome to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance when installing the zipper. But I'm going to go for a regular 3/8. There we go. So this lining piece needs to go wrong sides together. Now this is a bit of a chunky stitch to do now. If you want, you see I've got this seam allowance here. If you want to, you can trim this off. So I haven't cut the part where the zipper was, I've cut the seam allowance where the outer pleated bit, or the accent, sewed onto the fabric strip. There we go, that feels nicer. So I had a bit of bulk on this seam, so I pinched that, which was due to these seam allowances, so I've just trimmed them off. So right sides together. If you want to, you can press this side, but if like me you have faux leather, you can't press this side. Do your best. We're going to top stitch nicely. There we go, and it will look something like that. But you'll tell. So grab your front lining piece and we're going to place them on top. So ideally the lining fabrics are right sides together, and we're matching the top edge to the raw edge of the zipper, just as we did before, base them in place along the edge, like so. So in theory, these should be the same length. If you've changed your seam allowance, they might be slightly different. Don't stress about it. Lay that just as it is for a second, and we're going to sew across the bottom here using seam allowance. We're doing it now. Do it now, get it done, so that we don't forget. Across the bottom using seam allowance, like that. So your pocket is sewn up, and then we can add the upper front piece. So lay it directionally whichever way you want, and flip it down so that the right side's together. I'm going to sew all the way across using the same seam allowance as when you sewed the bottoms up. So in the pattern it's 3/8 because I've got a number 5 zipper. If you're unsure or you've got something different, go for a 1/4 inch. But we're going to sew them together. And then push up just this piece. Is it me or did mine look wonky? Mine looks wonky. I shall change that because I think my top piece needs to shimmy over a bit. But if yours looks good, go ahead and top stitch this seam to hold it in place. So once you've top stitched, bring your zipper to the middle and trim off the excess. Add fray stopper if you wish. And also, if you wish, you can baste down the side edges. I'm just going to bring this zipper back together, just so everything sits nicely. Right. If you need to trim anything, obviously check the sizing. If you've used a different seam allowance on your zipper, you might find this a little bit long. Just trim off the bottom. And I can't remember if I've said it already, but baste down the sides if you wish. I'm going to do exactly the same as we did with the back slip pocket. So we're going to sew the sides in. I'm actually, because we've done this and I've shown you it and you're amazing, I'm going to do them both at the same time. Because you know exactly what I'm doing, so it's all good. So down the sides using seam allowance, and then just as you did with the back piece, press if you're able to. But we're going to top stitch down the sides of the seams with the seam allowances facing the sides. So you can do one at a time like in the pattern, or you go for both. There we go. And that is looking pretty scrummy. Now we're going to add some structure. So lay the pieces on your foam and cut around them. But before we base stitch them, I will just show you how to remove some bulk. So I'm going to go and cut around mine. I'm also going to have a quick sandwich because I'm starving, and then we'll come back. So once you have placed your outer body pieces onto the foam, we can trim off that bulk. So I'm just pulling back the corners and I'm literally just snipping off a chunk, and this removes the bulk from the seam allowances. When we join pieces to pieces, we don't need it there, so that can go. And then what you can do is sew them together all the way around using a really long stitch length at a rough 1/4 inch. So anywhere within the 3/8 seam allowance, a 1/4 inch is a nice measurement. And once you've done it, you can flip this over and trim the foam away from the seam allowance. By using the 1/4 inch, you can take a good amount of just excess away. But you can see those corners. So do that with both to the foam, and then we can start like actual construction. Woo! Ready here. Construction. So we need a zipper, your zipper, and I've just sewn over the closed end just to stop the zipper coming off. Now we need to make folds in what I call the open end, and the easiest way I find to explain how to make the folds, because doing and explaining are two very different things. So from the open end, I've measured and marked an inch down, and I'm going to fold my zipper at those markers. Then on the edges of the zipper tape, I'm just going to add, or just run a few stitches on both edges. And this will hold the fold. So once you have folded and sewn, I put too many in on that side. Too many. Doesn't want to open. I know I could use my seam ripper, but right. I'm taking this fold and I'm pushing it to the teeth of the zipper. And it's now making this lovely right angle, 90-degree angle. And I'm doing the same on this side. So you have two 90-degree angles, and then again run some more stitches down the edge of the zipper teeth to hold, not teeth, the edge of the zipper tape to hold this fold in place. There we go. So I've sewn down the edge just to hold this fold in place. And if all has gone well, they're the same. So grab the front panel. This is the one with the zipper in. And before we place the zipper closure, we just need to make some marks. So I'm marking 1 inch to the left of this left seam and 1/2 inch to the right of the right seam. So I'll open this up and we're going right side to the panel, so wrong side up on the zipper. And we're matching this open end, the fold, to the left side marker. I'm just going to transfer this right side marker onto the tape so that I can see it. But we're going to baste the zipper to the panel from one marker to the other only, so that we've got room at the ends for like seam allowances and stuff, you know. So base stitch it along the edge. Use a zipper foot if needed, like so. And then take the back panel, which has the slip pocket in, and we're going to do the opposite. So we're going 1 inch to the right of the right seam and 1/2 inch to the left of the left seam. So completely the opposite. And then bring the zipper over. Obviously it's attached to the panel, so pull that along too. And again we're going opposite, so the folded open end to the right side marker. I'm just going to transfer this onto the teeth so I can see, to the tape I mean, and then we're going to sew between the marker from left to right along the edge, zipper foot if needed. Obviously you've got to bring this panel along, so just arrange it whichever way is easiest. There we go. So the zipper is sewn to both panels. Now what we need to do is do your zipper up about halfway. This is just to make sure that when we're constructing it, you're not sewing it with a twisted zipper. That's going to be nothing worse than finishing the outer and finding the zipper is all twisty-wisty. So I've done it halfway. I'm going to tuck this tail in. And clip the outer panel pieces together. So I'm just going to do the sides a second. When doing the base, you want to match up these seams. Just makes it look a little tidier. Like that. And we're going to sew them together down the side edges and along the bottom edge. Don't sew the cutout corners. We're using seam allowance. Like that. And then if you want to, you can trim off some bulk. How do it now? I never go all the way to the end when cutting the bulk, because we've got to open these seams at some point, and it's easier to do it if you've got something to hold on to. These little tiny seams are a nightmare and they never stay open. I'm also going to trim the base, but I'm avoiding where those seams are. So I'm not taking a massive amount off the bottom edge. Right, so let's box those corners. Open it up. Bring the side seam to meet the seam on the bottom edge and open up those seams. Like I said, it's a lot easier to do if you've got something to hold on to. Let's do the other one over here. I'm just going to open the zip as well, while I remember. There we go. That's better. And then sew across here using seam allowance and here using seam allowance. If your fabric's thick or you want to add a little support to the corners, you can run a second row of stitching about an eighth behind the first. Okay, so we'll do that, seam allowance and support stitching if needed, if your fabric's thick or you just want to. I'm just taking the smallest amount off the seam allowances. But that is that box. You can see it's starting to take a lovely shape. So put that aside for a second. I'm going to do the strap and strap connectors. So if you have used faux leather cork or something that you can't press, you will want to draw a line down the long centre. So you have to measure and mark that. If you have cotton, linen or something you can press, you can fold this in half long ways to find the long centre line and then bring the long raw edges in to meet that centre line and press. So do what you need to do with whichever one you have. Now you might have 2 O-rings, you might have 2 rectangular rings. The O-rings are good if you want to add a detachable long strap. Rectangular rings or even these fancy ones are good if you're not bothered about long strap. I'm going to keep this one as a handbag, so I'm going for these ones, and this is super important. Slide these on now. Put them on now, because there's no point in making these fancy strap if these aren't on there. It defeats the purpose. So this fancy strap, yeah, like that. Let me just check that I am still in the shot so you can see. Right, so I have folded it in such a way that it is in a U shape, so there are no twists or turns. The right side is showing here, and you can see no twisties, no turnies. I'm trying to just arrange it so that it's kind of the same length as the accent piece, because what we need to do is lay the accent piece on top. It's going to get noisy because no matter what you do, you're going to be clanking these around everywhere. And then if one of yours is folded, open it up the best you can. Add as many clips as needed. If you want to use a cutting mat just to make sure that this is all like level, feel free. But like that. So you can see again, this is not twisted or folded anyway, and this is not twisted or folded anyway, and the fabrics are right side together. Now, if we were piecing a strap, this would be the bit that you would see on the screen, and it's exactly the same way. But you have to make sure that your diagonals are going the correct way. So I'm going from that corner to that corner. Okay. So not this one where the angles are, you know, the right angle. A better way to explain it is that makes a flat edge, that makes a flat edge. Is that a better way to explain it? I'm going to sew them together on top of that line and on top of that line. There we go. And I'm just going to trim off the excess. And what we can do is open up the seams. I'll show you that way what I'm doing. Open up the seams and top stitch both sides of the seam to hold them open, because it gets fiddly. This next bit is a little bit fiddly diddly, so it's easier if things are complying. So top stitch. There we go. Once it's top stitch, it should look something like that, and you see it's starting to take shape. So what we need to do now is refold the strap. Nice and simple to do if you've used cotton or linen. If you haven't, you might need some double-sided tape. Right, tape is on. So you can see that the cotton has refolded itself anyways. It's just the faux leather that needs to be brought to the center line. I can't see it from where I'm looking, and I don't want to get my big forehead in the video. Any bits that want to try and pop open, just pop a little clip on them for you. And do the same with the other side. I'm not bringing the faux leather in completely to the middle. I am leaving a little gap because I always find when folding faux leather, especially because you're using double-sided tape and you're keeping it neat, for some reason the cotton always ends up slightly thicker. So I'm leaving a little gap just to hope that it will match the thickness of the cotton. Like that. One last thing before we sew them together. I'm just going to shimmy that out of the way. Bring the seams together. Like this. And then just doing this to measure the mark the inside. Do you know what? I thought I had them on the wrong way then and forgot that they can turn around. I had a bit of a panic. I'm going to mark the top here. And hopefully I'll be able to see it. Luckily, I've landed that fold on a light colour so I can actually see my marker pen. Otherwise, you might have to use a pin. So unclip. I'm just going to pop that back on there a second. And this marker goes against this marker. Before we get carried away, ensure that one rectangular ring, O-ring, whatever you've used, one is on each end. You don't want two on one end. Yeah, strap won't work. Now you've matched up the centres. Matching up two halves of the strap. Like so. Sew the two halves together to make a strap. And we're going to go round in a rectangular box, so down the edge, across, down the edge and across again. I'm not going to go too close to the ends because my foot won't like that. So I'm going to go about 3/4 of an inch. If you have a particularly wide foot, you could go further away. But I'm going to sew down across here and back down. Afterwards, if you want to, for decoration, or you feel this is a bit gaping, I'm sure that's a word, you can add a rivet or sew another line of stitches. It's all good. I shall stop throwing my quilting rulers around and get on and stitch this. There we go. So we just need to add our strap connectors. So pretty much what we did with the strap itself, we've got the long center line and we're going to bring the raw edges in. You can either do that by pressing or take clips like this. That one doesn't want to stick. And once you've pressed them into the center, you're going to top stitch down the long sides and do that on both. So once you've made your strap connectors, you can place one on each O-ring, rectangular ring, whichever you've got. So fold them over so that the raw edges are enclosed. Bring the ends in to meet. I'm going to base stitch along the ends just to keep them together, like so. And then before we attach them to the bag, what I want to do is measure down 1/2 an inch and I'll explain all in a second. So I've done that on the wrong side. I don't want to call it the wrong side because it's not the wrong side, but you know what I mean. This side. So take your outer bag and turn it right side out. And this is where you get your first look at how pretty it is. have to stand up for this. Right, one side seam. Don't stress about the fact that it doesn't go straight across. We're not worried about that. We're more worried about the fact that it needs to be centered. So open up these seams as well, if you can. I've got my finger on the one. Centered. And the 1/2 inch line that we drew is level with the top of the bag. Like that. And then the other important thing to mention is the accent fabric is to the bag. I've got one on here. And if you bring this round, I'm not twisting, I'm not turning it in any way. Zipper out the way. I'm doing the same on this side. Just opening the seam allowances. It's centered. It's overhanging. And the accent fabric is to the bag. And we're going to base stitch them, the connector, strap connector, to the bag within the seam allowance. So you can imagine that this line is the top of the bag, so about a 1/4 inch below that. And the same on this side. So double check. Accent fabric is to the bag. There are no twists, there are no turns. And baste your connectors in place. There we go. So that is our handle in place, and that is the outer done. I told you, it's a lot of pieces, but it's all just straight lines. So we can go ahead and set this to the side for now. And join me in video 2, which works on the lining and the final construction. This is all for video 1. I think that's enough. Go and get yourself a little treat.